Hello! Today we will dive into the topic of job search. After graduation, you will certainly have an insatiable desire to start applying what you have learned in practice. Probably the best option for a novice dispatcher is to find a job in a trucking or a dispatch company. Let's check the difference. Working for a trucking company, you will only load the trucks of this particular company, this particular motor carrier. A carrier may hire company drivers and provide them with equipment, such as trucks and trailers. In this case, the drivers are paid for the number of miles they complete. Usually they get around 50 to 70 cents per mile. When hiring these drivers, the carrier often makes promises of some kind. For example, come to our company, we'll pay 60 cents a mile and you'll drive at least 2,500 miles every week. If you crunch the numbers, it's not so bad for the driver. $1,500 per week, $6,000 a month, plus additional bonuses may apply. Monthly salaries for company drivers can be as high as $8,000 a month. Regardless, there is a shortage of drivers in logistics. A large number of company drivers continually save up money while working to buy their own trucks. This gives them even more earning potential as well as the freedom to choose their own schedule while being their own boss. However, not all drivers, once they acquire their own truck, open their own company and get an MC authority. The second type of drivers a transport company may hire are owner-operators. You already know from previous lessons that an owner-operator is the owner of the truck who drives it himself. This term applies not only to those who own their own business, but also to drivers who work for a company while owning their own equipment. These drivers are usually employed by the company as free agents. As a salary, they get most of the income from their operating activities, minus all expenses. The percentage of gross income that an owner-operator earns depends on the services that the company offers him. For example, an offer could be as follows. Come to our company, get 90% of the profit working with your equipment. We'll provide you with MC authority, factoring, and dispatching. In that case, the driver will get the full amount of his truck's income minus all operating expenses, insurance, fuel, tolls, and so on. And also minus the 10% from which the company will cover its own costs and earn a small profit. Some trucking companies expand by investing in trucks and trailers and hiring additional company drivers. Others expand by hiring drivers with their own equipment. This requires much less investment, but their profit potential is also much smaller. Regardless of how a trucking company develops, it will always need a strong dispatch department. Companies that work with owner-operators are more inclined to hire remote dispatchers. They operate on very low margins and always try to cut costs. The extra $1,000 or $2,000 a month that they would have to pay to a dispatcher based in the US plays a huge role for them, and they're constantly on the lookout for talent overseas. Large companies are even opening their own dispatch offices in other countries. I know for a fact that there are plenty of such offices in Eastern Europe, Asia, Middle East, and Latin America. I'm sure that if you search well, you will find such companies in your country, maybe even in your city. Working in an actual office is a fantastic experience for a dispatcher. Being in the professional environment, observing the work of your colleagues, why not? But you and I are still looking to find work remotely, which would also be a great way to start. Let's consider the main advantages of working for a trucking company. First, you'll have clearly defined goals and objectives. Unlike solo carriers, transportation companies know exactly what they're aiming for. These goals are likely to be based on the company's experience, historical numbers, and understanding of the market, which means they will be real and achievable. Next, no self-respecting company would hire a dispatcher and leave him in an ocean of uncharted waters to fight for his own life. You'll most likely have a supervisor, a manager, a mentor. You'll be taught the internal processes of the company, and you'll be given examples of routes on which other dispatchers successfully run their trucks. You'll be given the necessary tools to analyze the market, and in the early stages they will help you in every way until your skills and results reach their standards. Of course, I can't speak for all companies, but I know firsthand that these are the standard practices that are required to succeed in this industry. There are, of course, also downsides. It is likely that in the early stages you will encounter a lot of stress because your experienced colleagues will be a step ahead of you, and they will demand the same level of professionalism from you. Small mistakes and shortcomings are inevitable at the beginning of any career. The main thing here is to get through the first couple of months, and then it will get easier and easier. Another disadvantage is the salary. It's not uncommon for a beginner dispatcher to be offered a flat rate because you'll start out with dispatching a small number of trucks, and you'll need a base salary until you gain experience and can take on more work. Due to the fact that the company hired you with little or no experience and invested money and effort in you, they will have every right to raise your salary very slowly, little by little. For example, by adding a small percentage of the truck's profit, such that you start earning a little more but still not at the average market level. But not to worry. When you get to this point, you can start thinking about moving to another company or starting your own business. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's talk about dispatch services. Working in a dispatching service means working for a company that will provide you with their customers, trucking companies, and pay only a portion of the commission that the customer pays for the service. In this situation, you don't really work as an employee, but more as an independent agent. You're like an owner-operator who works for a company. You come in with your knowledge and skills, the company gives you the clients and all the tools to work, and in return, it takes a part of the commission that you generate. Such companies are very common in Asia, Latin America, and Eastern Europe. They hire employees on site to work in their offices, but almost every dispatch company also hires remote employees. It's even easier to get a job at such a company than at a trucking company. Many dispatch services will hire employees with little or no experience and train them in-house. Well, if during an interview you tell them that you've been fully trained in the profession, your chances of getting in the team are already doubled. So, the advantages of working in a dispatch service. It's easier to get on a team. You will be trained and taught their best practices. Maybe the company you get into knows something I don't, and you'll become an even more knowledgeable expert. If you find a job within your country or region, your managers and colleagues will speak your language, and it will be easier for you to adapt. Of course, you'll be provided all the tools for work and you won't need to invest anything. And starting a work in a dispatch service is less stressful. It's very unlikely that you'll be swamped with work from day one, as you would be at a trucking company. I would even say on the contrary. In such companies, people often don't have enough work and wait until the sales department signs more trucks. They'll probably give you your first customer, an owner-operator with one truck, and you'll gradually take on more customers, giving you time to get used to the work schedule. Now, for the disadvantages. First, your customers' goals and objectives will be more vague than those of an employer in a large transportation company. Dispatch companies usually work with owner-operators and small carriers. Their requests are often poorly communicated to the dispatcher and sometimes may not match the realities of the market. It will be more difficult for you to figure out how to provide the service to satisfy the customer. Most small dispatch services are built by craftsmen, people who are good at their job but most likely don't have much experience in building a business. When working for such a company, there is a chance of running into unprofessional management or poorly thought out business processes. Well, to be fair, this is a potential problem of working for any small company. Next, you will most likely have to work with different types of equipment all at the same time. For example, if your first customer is a reefer, you get used to it and you're looking forward to a new reefer customer, you might be disappointed. Your next customer may be a 40-foot hotshot flatbed and you'll have to learn the details of working with it from scratch. On the other hand, you'll become an all-purpose dispatcher and will be able to narrow your area of expertise later in your career. In many dispatch companies, you'll only get a commission of the income you bring to the company. Not many dispatch services pay a flat rate, so your earnings will be small until you get experience and start working with at least a couple of customers. If a customer leaves you, you'll have to wait for the sales department to find you a new one. As I said, not all dispatch companies can boast a huge flow of clients. Accordingly, there's a risk of losing a significant portion of your earnings for an indefinite period of time. On the other hand, you can use your free time to find your own customers. There'll be more info on this in the next module, so don't worry, there's always a way out. Okay, we made a little comparison of the two main employment options. There are others related to dispatching, and you can also explore those upon course completion. Some potential jobs in the transportation industry for you are freight broker, safety manager, fleet manager, supply chain manager, weekend or night dispatcher, etc. The choice is yours. Honestly, if I were you, I wouldn't even focus on any one option. I would just actively look for a job and jump at the first opportunity that comes up. Your goal is to get started, start getting experience, start figuring things out, start taking actions. You can change jobs at any time, and without trying out a bad job, you won't learn to appreciate a good one. Alright, that's enough talk. Move on to the next lesson. We're going to discuss where to look for jobs, how to apply, and how to make sure you're selected out of tens or even hundreds of candidates.